Topic today about the one of the high holy days that is coming up soon. We just went through one, which was the blowing of trumpets, and that was a good event. And again, we are not usually taught through the systems that we go in and out of every day about these days. So it's very important that we recap on these high holy days so we can get accustomed to it. So when someone asks the question, Day of Atonement, well, that's that Jewish thing, right? What are you doing, celebrating that? I mean, aren't you a Christian? Aren't you, you can have a scriptural response, because a lot of it can be found in the New Testament, in the book of Hebrews. They kind of bring that out. We're going to go over that quite a bit. And also in Deuteronomy and the book of Exodus and Numbers, those Torah portions that you can, and then when you get versed in it, then we're able to discuss properly what it's all about. What is that Day of Atonement? Why is affliction involved into it? What's that all about? So we're going to get into those things, brothers and sisters, and we're hopefully we can. We've had this class before. I think Shema 1 did one back in 2019 about this time. I think it was September 27th, that preparing for the Day of Atonement, and I did one on afflictions back in 2020, and then I did another one 2 years ago on this same topic. So a lot of these notes I gathered from it, but it's a different lesson, but the majority of it is the same. Why is it the same? Because it's the same scriptures, and we're not going to take away from or add to them. So it's going to be the same, but it's a good reminder, repetition, that we can understand what it is. So when these days come up, because oftentimes, even with us, we'll say, what are we supposed to be doing on that day? What's going on? Because, again, we're not accustomed to it like we are from the things that we have been brought up as our youth for Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving. We had those rehearsals every year that now we know what they do. That's the way we should be when we eliminate those because they're unrighteous, and then we bring in the righteous things and we get acclimated with those things. So that's what we want to do today is get into the Day of Atonement, afflict our souls. Last High Holy Day was just a couple of days ago, a few days ago, and we all gathered on the conference call, and Shema 1 did a brief breakdown of what the feast or the blowing of trumpets was all about, what it symbolizes, when are the trumpets blown and for what reasons, and so forth. We knew about the teruah, which is the actual blowing of or the sound and the things that are associated with it. And also, I wanted to let you all know that even though I did not see the new moon on, I think it was a 26th at sunset, it was actually seen by a lot of other brothers throughout the United States. And so that won't change our timing for the Day of Atonement, okay? Because we actually, when I took a picture of it, it was the next day, and it was a little higher than it normally is. And I kind of think, well, it must have been out there. And Shema 1 had smoky skies down there. He couldn't really see in the western skies. And I was in a location where I could not get my normal visual look that I have when I'm at home. So it could have been there, or it was there. We just did not visually see it. But that was the proper day. And when we did our class, it was at the end of the actual blowing of trumpets. So, but anyway, I'm just letting you know that our days will not be thrown off. The Day of Atonement is still the 10th day of the 7th month, which is going to come in on the 5th at sunset. The 5th at sunset, and it's going to last until sunset on the 6th of October. Here we are today on the Gregorian calendar on October 1st, but we're actually a few days in a month, like 4 days into the month, 4 or 5 in the 7th month. So with that said, before we get into Colossians, well, I'm going to go ahead and do with Colossians first, and I'm going to go to a scripture that kind of talked about some things with the blowing of trumpets as it relates to the Day of Atonement, and also with the Feast of Tabernacles, or booths, as we call it. But let's go to Colossians 3:17 first and foremost, and let's get some scriptures in. And when we get these scriptures started, we hit a whole lot of them. So that way you get understanding as the way the Most High wanted you to get it from the written word. And Colossians 3:17 says, "And whatsoever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of Hamashiach, giving thanks to the Most High and the Father by Him." Okay? So that's what we want to do. Everything that we do, including this class, everything, whether we do it in our speech or we do it by our actions, let it all be giving glory and honor to the Most High through His Son. All right? So let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 3. That's just a couple pages over. 2 Timothy chapter 3, and we'll read verses 15 through 17. So here you go. 2 Timothy 3:15 reads, "And that from a child thou hast known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make you wise unto salvation through faith, which is in Hamashiach Yahushua. All Scripture, all of them, is given by inspiration of the Most High, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of the Most High may be perfect, thoroughly furnished into all good works." So that's what we're going to be doing with the class today, is finding the prophet, not the prophet who foretells things, but the prophet as gaining wisdom from our instructions in righteousness on how to do the feast days, because there's a whole chapter, several chapters that talks about feast days, and we're going to be hitting those today. So let's go back a moment and go to the Apocrypha in First Ezra. Let's go to the Apocrypha to start it off, First Ezra, because I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to chapter 9, just so you know where I'm going to go. First Ezra chapter 9. I'm going to start at verse 40. But when we, the brothers down here, when we gathered, they posted something, and I shared it with you all on the link. And they had a custom of actually on the blowing of trumpet celebration, reading the laws. And you see that when we had that conference call earlier this week, Shemaiah 1 did the same thing. He read the 10 Commandments, and we read them. Remember that? It's a reason for that. The Spirit is moving us. And these brothers who were down here, they had posted 2 videos from Lion's Roar. When Shemaiah 1, I don't know what year that was, he sounded so young. He sounded like a teenager. Now he's an old man. It's just an old video is what I'm trying to say. It was made some years back. He did such a splendid job on presenting the 613 laws. It was in 2 parts, the part 1 and the part 2. These brothers down here were sharing that with all the brothers here. On the blowing of trumpets, it was reading the law. And it makes so much sense, and I'm going to get to that in a moment, of why that is connected with the Day of Atonement, and then later the Tabernacles. It's interesting. You all may already know this because you're pretty sharp, but it just hit me in a different way during these high holy days. But anyway, if you have those videos or check them out, and between now and the Day of Atonement, I would suggest brothers and sisters reading or hearing or both the laws, because it's important when we do that. So anyway, let's go to 1 Ezra chapter 9. We're going to start at verse 40. This is 1 Ezra. This is in the Apocrypha, chapter 9, verse 40. I'm going to read 40 and 41 first. And it says, So Ezra, the chief priest, brought the law into the whole multitude from man to woman, and to all the priests to hear law in the first day of the 7th month. You see that? And he read in the broad court before the holy porch from morning until midday, before both men and women, and the multitude gave heed unto the law. So now y'all know this is talking about the same day as the blowing of trumpets. Let's skip down to verse 45. Then took Ezra the book of the law before the multitude, for he sat honorably in the first place in the sight of them all. And when he opened the law, they stood all straight up. So Ezra blessed the Most High Yahweh, Most High, the power of hosts, Almighty. And all the people answered, Amen. And lifting up their hands, they fell to the ground and worshiped the Most High. So you see what's going on there, right? And let's skip down to verse 50. This day, verse 50 says, is holy unto Yahweh, for they all wept when they heard the law. They all wept. Verse 52, for this day is holy unto the Most High, and be not sorrowful, for the Most High will bring you to honor. So the Levites published all things to the people, saying, This day is holy to Yahweh. Be not sorrowful. Then when they, on verse 54, then went they their way, every one to eat and drink, and to make merry, and to give part to them that had nothing, and to make great cheer, because they understood the words wherein they were instructed, and for the which they had been assembled. And that's the end of the first book of Ezra. Now, during the last time we got together when Shemaiah 1 was going over the blowing of trumpets, remember he kept talking about feast. I mean, you all eat. That was part of it. And you see that's in line. He went over the commandment. That was in line. All of this, and what I found out by reading this is that when you go in, before going to the Day of Atonement, when you are reading this law, what's going to cause you to weep and be sorrow is some type of turmoil going inside you where you feel like, because when you go over that whole 613, you're going to find out how imperfect you are. You're going to find out what things that you are doing are, that you shouldn't be doing, or the things that you should be doing that you're not doing, right? So that should cause that heaviness. And that's why the people, after they were reading it, Ezra was reading it and so forth, they felt sorry, but he was reminding them, no, this is not a day. This is a day that is set by the Most High. Be joyful and leave that alone, and eat and be merry and so forth, because your day is coming. He didn't say this what we just read, but we know the Day of Atonement follows 10 days after that event. And that's when that affliction, and the affliction is not like what we suffer in Babylon, what the people be afflicting us, with, our enemies afflict us with. This is that inner affliction. And we'll see when we get to the scripture, it says, afflict ourselves. So the word is causing that affliction to really, so when we get to the atonement, we are now having that sorrow, afflicted feeling after hearing the laws and the instructions that were given before. So it made a connection to me. I'm not sure if it does it with you all, but it did it with me on those two high holy days. So I wanted to read that because that's something next year, if we are here for next year, then we may want to include that into our trumpets when we're blowing those. And then reading or watching the video where Shema 1 goes over all of them, or any other video, or they got a lot of places where you can get all of the laws, where it's in a written form, and give the scripture with it, where you can actually say them, so you're understanding and you're being able to see things that you didn't consider, because 613 is a lot, even though most of them are in the sacrificial field. So, of course, those we don't do, but it's still good to know the understanding behind them, as we're going to learn about the sacrifice of the Day of Atonement, and how they're still relevant even though we don't have to do a sacrifice. So let's get into it and see what it's all about. Let's go to Genesis first. Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. And it's a simple verse, but it has a lot of meat to it. Genesis chapter 2, verse 7 says, "And Yahweh the Most High formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. The man became a living soul." So we see, the reason I'm saying that, because we're talking about afflicting our souls, right? And is that we are two-part beings, right? We have the fleshly side to us, and that's the affliction that a lot of us feel when we're in sicknesses and when we're in hurt, or we getting our backs beat, or whatever the case may be. That is the physical sense of a soul. But it's another part, the spiritual side, that was breathed into the nostrils, and then we became a living soul. So we're going to be, that most of that spiritual side is what we feel in the afflictions of the atonement, is we feel those in our spirit. Why? It's because of the things that we may be doing that's in disobedience. And some of the disobedience is not willful. We just don't know. So that's why it's important to get those so we can understand what they are. Everybody want to come here and turn on alarms when I'm giving a lesson, because these are the scriptures that you want to write down. These are the ones that cover basically what it's all about. So let's read it, starting with verse 26. It says, "And the Most High spoke unto Moses, saying, Also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and you shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto the Most High. And you shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before the Most High your power. For whatsoever soul it shall be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from among his people." That shows the importance of it and how valid it is. "And whatsoever soul it be that doeth any work in that same day, the same soul will I destroy from among his people." Okay, so that's also important. So we got to get in the habit, as I have been recently, as actually making sure I am off on these days. All right? And just not letting it go past it. Well, most I know I got a job, so, just, put some effort, because right here it's showing it is important to, not me, it's important to the Most High. So deal with it in that same importance. Even if you didn't have it this year, pray for forgiveness and then do better next year. Here we go. Back to verse 31. "You shall do no manner of work. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings." Verse 32, "It shall be unto you a Shabbat, or a Sabbath of rest, and you shall afflict your souls." Check this out. "In the 9th day of the month at even, from even to even, shall you celebrate your Shabbats. Okay, now don't let that 9th day in verse 32 say, wait a minute, they just said the 10th day. Well, it is the 10th day. This is saying that on the 9th day at evening, in other words, right before the 10th day starts, right as they transition from the 9th day at even, that's when the 10th day is going to start, right? So it's still in balance. And we'll give you some more scriptures just to give other witnesses to that point, so you don't have not confused and thinking the Bible is contradicting itself, because it's not. Now let's go to the book of Levi. Stay in Levi, because we're going to really be in a lot, like I said, the Torah, and we're going to be a lot in Hebrews and other places, but mainly the book of Hebrews and the Torah. So let's go to Leviticus 25, verse 8 and 9. And this one is let's just read it. Leviticus 25, verse 8 and 9. And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee, 7 times 7 years, and the space of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto thee 49 years. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee, which that same word right there is teruah, which is blowing, to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. You hear that? In the day of atonement shall you make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. This is talking about the Jubilee, which is, and it gave you a breakdown of what a Jubilee is. It's 7 Sabbaths, kind of like Pentecost, isn't it? It's so similar. Like when Shema just made reference back to the spring holy days. This is another comparison. You got like Pentecost, you count 7 Sabbaths, blah, 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 and then you got the 5th, the next day, that's Pentecost. This is very similar. The Jubilee, but it's not 50 days. This is 50 years. And there's certain things that happen on the Jubilee year. I myself need to get more understanding of where we are by seeing, I know some brothers out there got calendars they've been keeping it since Adam's time. They can tell you exactly what Jubilee we're in right now. They can tell you which 50-year period we're in. But it'd be good to know, so we're having these Day of Atonements, it could be a Jubilee year, 50 a year, which has more significance, where we'll now be reading a lot of Leviticus chapter 25 that talks about those Jubilee years, okay? So anyway, I just wanted to bring that out because a Jubilee falls on that Day of Atonement. The year is a year, but they cause the trumpets to be sound in that Jubilee on the Day of Atonement after the blowing of trumpets on the 7th month, okay, as we just read about. I just wanted to bring that out. And let's go now to Numbers chapter 29. I'm going to read verses 7 through 11. And this whole one is about the blowing of the Feast of the Trumpets and talking about more details from Leviticus 23, part of the priest code, as they call it. Okay, and we got Numbers chapter 29, verses 7 through 11. And it reads, And you shall have on the 10th day of this 7th month an holy convocation, and you shall afflict your souls. You shall not do any work therein. Okay, we just read about that. So there's a second witness to confirm it. Verse 8, But you shall offer a burnt offering unto the Most High for a sweet savor, 1 young bullock, 1 ram, and 7 lambs of the first year. They shall be unto you without blemish. And their meat offering shall be of flour mingled with oil, 3/10 deals to a bullock, and 2/10 deals to 1 ram. A several tenth deal for 1 lamb throughout the 7 lambs. Verse 11, 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering, beside the sin offering of atonement, and the continual burnt offering and the meat offerings of it, and their drink offering. Now, and we're going to get into why we are not doing what we just read. Are we being disobedient? We're going to see. We are recognizing it, but we have a sacrifice that was much better than those, which we're going to get into when we get into the book of Hebrews. But it just gives you a breakdown of what they were doing and to atone every year at this time. Now let's go back to Leviticus chapter 16. Leviticus chapter 16, and we're going to read verses, I think, 29. Yeah. We're going to read Leviticus 16, 29 through 34. Leviticus 16, 29 through 34. And this shall be a statute forever unto you. That's why we're still doing it. That in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls and do no work at all, whether it be one of your own country, in your own nation, or a stranger that sojourneth among you. So there's a third witness. So this matter should be well established. Verse 30, for on that day shall the priest make an atonement for you to cleanse you, that you may be clean from all your sins before the Most High. It shall be a Sabbath of rest unto you, and you shall afflict your souls by a statute forever. It's there again. So let's just keep reading. And the priest whom he shall anoint and whom he shall consecrate to minister in the priest's office in his father's stead shall make the atonement and shall put on the linen clothes, even the holy garments. So again, this is part of the priest code. This is what they had to do. That's what we found in the book of Leviticus. These are things they had to do to prepare. And that's why when the son, it was passed on the priestly duties to another one who was anointed to do so. To do what? To stand in, to do what his father used to do, and to be an atonement, or to make the atonement for the children of Israel. And he's to wear certain garments and whatnot. Verse 33, and he shall make an atonement for the holy sanctuary. So that's one atonement he's making. And he shall make an atonement for the tabernacle. That's another one of the congregation. And for the altar. And he shall make an atonement for the priest. And for all the people, that's Israel, of the congregation. And this shall be an everlasting statute unto you, to make an atonement for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year. And he did as Yahweh commanded Moses. Okay? So again, you're getting more insight on what it's all about and who was doing it. So now we got to look and see, okay, well, how does that relate? What are we supposed? We ain't got no priest. Yeah, we do. Let's find out and see how we can still do what we do on Day of Atonement, because a lot of people want to just kick your feet up from under you. At least I have them doing that to me. It just was last week, where they want to say, well, you don't have to do that because blah, 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 or that is only for, but we just read what the word said. Obviously, they did not. This is something we continue to do. And then they have a problem. Well, are you still doing that with the animals? Are you still blah, blah, blah? Who's the priest doing that? That required a priest to do it. And then you have the brothers who don't believe in Hamashiach. They just only have the old covenant thinking. And then so they now have to balance what we got to still do. We got to find a priest. We got to find out. It's just so much confusion when you walk outside this word. But let's just put it in basic form where we all can understand on how I think you all already do, but let's just go over it again. And to do so, let's go to the book of Hebrews, chapter 10. Hebrews, chapter 10, because the Hebrews, I love that book because just the way it sounds. You know it's for us. Hebrews, chapter 10, and we're going to start at verse 1. I'm going to read down to verse 6, first of all. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 1 through 6 says, "For the law, having a shadow of good things to come," let's pause there for a second. When we read that word law, a lot of people outside always want to say that the law is done away with, and they go to a couple scriptures, but this is another one that they go to. They say, well, it was a shadow of things to come, and so, but after Christ came, then the law has no significance. I think you all know that this is talking about the sacrificial law, and it will explain it is nothing but the sacrificial law as we read. So when we start off by saying, for the law having a shadow of good things to come, it would be easier to say for the sacrificial law having a shadow of good things to come. Now, I want to add to those scriptures, so I'm just giving you understanding, and you'll see as we keep reading that it's talking about sacrificial laws. It ain't talking about the law of having, now we can have idols instead of the Most High. Now we can bow down. Now we can be dishonorable to our mother and our father. No, it's not talking about those as a shadow. Those are still solid as a rock. This is talking about the sacrificial ones. Let's keep going. For the law having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of things, can never, with those sacrifices which they offered year by year, we know which one that is now because we just read about it, offer year by year continually, make the comers therefore are thereunto perfect. Verse 2, for then would they not have ceased to be offered, because that the worshippers once purged should have had no more conscience of sins. See that? But in those sacrifices, there is a remembrance again made of sins every year. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sin. That's why they were rehearsing that. Even in the Levitical priest code, it was a rehearsal. That's why they had to keep coming back every year. And that's why they know it really wasn't effective, because, hey, it's just a shadow of things to come, which is Hamashiach, which we're going to get to in a minute. But that's why they had to keep going back every year. So if it was really doing that, why would you have to keep going back? So let's just keep reading. Verse 5, wherefore when he cometh into the world, he said, sacrifice and offerings thou wouldest not, but a body hast thou prepared me. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin thou hast had no pleasure. Okay, so now we see clearly that this is talking about the sacrificial part. This is what we're talking about here today. Let's skip down to verse 10 and read 10 through 12 of Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 10 through 12 reads, by the which we were all sanctified through the offering of the body of Hamashiach Yahushua once for all. And every priest standeth daily ministering and offering oftentimes the same sacrifices, which can never take away sin. That's why we don't do the sacrifices any longer. Verse 12, but this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of the Most High. Let's skip down to verse 18 through 23. Now, where remission of these is, there is no more offering of sin. Having therefore, brethren, boldness to enter into the holiest by the blood of Hamashiach, by a new and living way which he has consecrated for us through the veil, that is to say, his flesh, and having an high priest over the house of the Most High. Let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance and faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. We were just talking about that. Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised this. Okay? So now you can see who the high priest is, but we're going to give more indications of that.
This is the word of the Lord of hosts. I took you from the pastures and from following the sheep to be prince over my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone and have destroyed all the enemies in your path. I will make you a great name among the great ones of the earth. I will assign a place for my people in Israel. There I will plant them, and they shall dwell in their own land.